I'm revisiting this thing with my theory on the nut jobs in Livingston County, because communities evolve and operate on a pattern of frequency pre-established by people that are unchecked throughout large periods of time. And now that we've already established that there is no higher authority operating in the United States that oversees these pockets of government found in each and every state, they pretty much operate all on their own. They're directed by people of like minds. They are able to collect and use taxes from people, and they are able to pretty much orchestrate madness on individuals' everyday life. And there's nobody overseeing these people. And so I'm sure there are people out there much like me saying, so how did all of this transpire? I mean, the false blanketing and belief of the United States, where there really is no such thing as freedom, and individuals do not have the right to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. Okay? That's proven. There's always a group of people that will intervene in on your happiness. So even if you're on a solid path for prosperity and happiness, there's always going to be a group of people that will intervene in on your path and reroute you in another direction based on their own thoughts processing throughout their brain at the time. And so we have to go back to the beginning of how this was even allowed to transpire and carry through to where it is today. Because let's face it, there's no American dream, okay? This is a nightmare that we all live in. And it was allowed to grow to these heights and dimensions. And so we have to go back to the beginning. And the question out there for anybody researching is there proof and evidence of the following, which I truly believe did happen, either through my readings or, you know, we see these movies, they gotta hold ounces of truth somewhere. It can't all be fictional stuff about the past, the history. So if somebody has the ability to research this further and put some truth out there, we might be making some progress on understanding the world that we now live in. If back in the day, prior to any thought of creating this place with, that has this umbrella called the United States of America. So back in the day, when England stood all on their own, before there was a United Kingdom, so back when each country bordering England stood on their own, before they joined forces under a like thought process and pattern to become the United Kingdom, also known as the UK. So when England stood all on their own, they must have believed that that section of land was a section of land that was previously owned and occupied by their descendants on royal bloodlines, okay? When in all reality, they could have been hired by the original owners to be like watchtowers of the land to make sure nothing changed, okay? But somewhere along the line, they got it in their thoughts that they were the actual owners of the land. During that time where England stood all on their own before they were united by other bordering countries, they had a system set up for managing the land. And all those countries did, okay? It's not just England. And let's just say that England's system of land management went something like this. People were allowed to occupy certain sections of the land. Based on their needs, they were granted sections of land that they could occupy. In exchange for occupying the land, England simply asked them to contribute on an annual basis dollars and cents, and to make sure that those contributions were readily available at the time of collection. Other than that, they left them alone. At the time of collection, if the land rent that they call taxation was not available for collection, England had the authority, because they were the owners of the land, to give them additional time based on previous collections, or take that section of land back. And in doing so, the removal of the people off the land, those people, if they had no place to go, were placed under the servant's hand. They became servants to the crown. Anybody that barked, made complaint, disagreed, caused turbulence to that long-standing process, they were placed in, I hate to say the words, but I'm going to say it, nut job homes. Because the way England operated was historically known, and everybody should have known, and anybody that pushed back and against the way things had already historically been operating were viewed as people not thinking of the right mind. And so if they refused to go into the hands of slavery, servants, where they were provided with shelter, food, clothing, and shelter, then they were placed in these insane asylums, okay? At some point, and I really, really do believe it was during the time frame of King Henry VIII, one of the girls that got locked up in one of these insane asylums, she entered through the doors knowing that she was pregnant, but because she was able to hide her pregnancy, no one knew. And when she was confronted with her condition, and when they asked who the father was, her response was that it was King Henry VIII's child. When King Henry VIII was confronted with this alleged pregnancy, he was involved with thinkers who were looking at the original thought that crossed somebody's mind at the time in which an accusation was made. And so at first, his response was, well, what was your original thought when she laid this accusation on the table? And if the original thought was the action that was taken, which was to confront the king, when the original thought should have been perhaps to put her under more observation. So slowly but surely, this girl was able to convince not only the people that visited her in her room, and also the people that stood outside of her room in the halls and in other rooms, but also people that moved around in the building that she was in. She was able to convince the people that stood outside of the building and had more freedom in the community to walk and move about. And because she was able to strongly convince all these people that the child that she was carrying was really King Henry VIII's child, he started losing his authoritative footing with the royal family. In this girl's ability to convince others, and that convincing led into the king's chambers, his thoughts began to break down as well. And over time, whether he convinced himself or others convinced him of this, they were able to break him down into believing that perhaps he was walking in his sleep and traveling through underground chambers and passages to this house where he was getting with this girl, and that's how they made the child that she was carrying, because she was definitely pregnant. He then started losing it, and instead of thinking wisely, more like a thinker would think, he started to plan things out in the best interest of this woman and in this child. And so he chartered and paid for, at the expense of the royal family, the people in this hospital, their escape. And they ended up in what is now New York. And when they arrived, because they were all on the same thought process and frequency, they killed people upon entry onto this land. And if you really do some research, you might find that the town of Williamson, New York, which is on Lake Ontario, off of Lake Ontario, you might find that that girl, the son that she carried, claiming that it was King Henry VIII's child, was actually the son of William And that child, his name was Charles. And you might also find that King Henry VIII never returned to England. But the power that a single person has when telling a lie to change history is very powerful indeed. And I don't think, even through current day, that people are able to decipher lies told. That's why I like to hold steady on the lines of truth. Go dig it up. You're going to find something like that. That's how this country was made. It was established on lies.